The story of Bud Light is not quite over. There are many things happening in the news which I think are particularly relevant and show that, my friends, those who believe in freedom, meritocracy, liberty, that means conservatives, post-liberals, libertarians, etc., we are winning. Bud Light will be laying off hundreds of U.S. workers, is the Bud Light brewer. We've also got news that Dylan Mulvaney, who sparked the outrage, has announced a slowdown, a step back, a reduction in content production. Meanwhile, Bud Light sales continue to shrink, and now Bud Light is being used as an example by some prominent individuals as to be taught in colleges what not to do and how to destroy your brand. Winning. That's all I can say is winning. Bud Light wanted to play dirty games. Well, you've won a dirty, dirty prize. And now they're trying to just act like nothing happened with new commercials. But no matter what they do, people say you are done. Bud Light is a dead brand. It's crazy to see. It really, really is. You know, for the longest time, we've had so many crazy stories happening where we would come out and say, Disney shouldn't do this. Netflix shouldn't do this. We demand boycott, etc. And nothing changed. But now it looks like you and I and those of us who are pushing back on the woke cult, and that's, like I said, post-liberals, conservatives, not just the right. But it looks like we are now coming into our community and power, our ability to say we vote with our dollars and we will not support these brands. And it's working. And it means that while the left may control powerful institutions, maybe even a majority of the cultural space, they are losing that control. Here's a story from the Wall Street Journal. Bud Light brewer lays off hundreds of U.S. workers. Anheuser-Busch restructures corporate offices amid controversy and sales slump. Well, you'll love to see it. Anheuser-Busch InBev laid off hundreds of workers at its U.S. offices after months of slumping sales at Bud Light. The world's largest brewer, which also sells Stella Artois and Budweiser, on Wednesday, said the cuts would affect less than 2% of its roughly 18,000 U.S. workforce. The layoffs won't impact frontline workers such as brewery and warehouse staff, the company said. Quote, "Well, we never take these decisions lightly. We want to ensure that our organization continues to be set for future long-term success," Anheuser-Busch Chief Executive Brendan Whitworth said in a written statement. "These corporate structure changes will enable our team to focus on what we do best, brewing great beer for everyone." I don't know how much people really think Bud Light was a great beer. The restructuring eliminated corporate and marketing roles at major U.S. offices, including St. Louis, New York, and L.A. Could you imagine working for Bud Light? They hire some dumb woke woman and she goes, "I got an idea." And now, several months later, you're being fired because of it. That's truly incredible, isn't it? Bud Light sales have tanked since April amid a commercial backlash over a promotion with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Earlier this summer, Mexican brand Modelo Especial dethroned Bud Light as the top-selling beer in the U.S. AB InBev is slated to update investors on its latest quarterly financial results next week. Oh, man. I can't wait to see that. I have to imagine that their stock is going to drop substantially. So I'm looking at their current. Actually, it's not looking too bad for Anheuser-Busch. It does look like they're recovering somewhat. Their worst point was May 31st. And since then, they've actually been decently recovering. I mean, we've slowly stopped talking about the story. We've a bit moved on. But now that they're going to be laying people off, the story is kicking back up. And today, they dropped from $59.14 down to $58.79. Next week, when they announce how much money they've lost, presumably, I imagine their stock is going to get hit once again. But you know what? A lot of people may think it's buy the dip. Can AB InBev really go away just because of one brand? Well, they lost Bud Light, so be it. But I don't know. Some people may find an opportunity there. Now we have this story from the Washington Examiner, and we'll come back to the Bud Light stuff. Dylan Mulvaney shares lessons of trust and trauma in 500 days of being a girl. You know, it's interesting that this idea of, quote, being a girl. Dylan Mulvaney is a trans woman, and I have to say, I don't actually believe Dylan Mulvaney is genuinely trans. I think Dylan Mulvaney is intentionally insulting and mocking trans people using it as a costume and a caricature to generate followers to make money. We've had trans people on Timcast IRL. Yeah, I've explained this before, but I think it bears repeating. And they don't sing about their bulges, right? They kind of just want to live their lives, be left alone. But Dylan Mulvaney, I believe, is putting on this character and undergoing plastic surgery and such, this for the same reason Madonna or any other celebrity would, to create a character that makes money. That's it. Take a look at this. Dylan Mulvaney surveyed lessons learned over 500 days of being a girl in a new social media video. Mulvaney, a biological man who identifies as a woman, shared how backlash concerning daily posts about trans joy caused trauma, resulting in a choice to scale back on social media posts. This is what I want to point out. I want to stress, not only is Bud Light terminating tons of jobs, but Dylan Mulvaney, in response to this, is actually saying that they will scale back on producing content. Take a look at this. Quote, "If I make the content that I want to make and freely share my trans joy, I subject myself to a lot more trauma. So lately I've chosen to scale back in order to protect my overall well-being, and it works," Mulvaney said in a post to TikTok and Instagram. "I am quite happy, but I am not doing what I love, so it's kind of a bittersweet thing." I can just rephrase this. The anger and outrage that Bud Light caused in endorsing Dylan Mulvaney has resulted in Dylan experiencing a negative pushback and pulling back on content. That's what protests do. How many brands are going to want to work with Dylan Mulvaney after this? I have to imagine Mulvaney and many other personalities are going to see their sponsorship opportunities dry up and disappear because Bud Light has been utterly destroyed. The activist and influencer celebrated day 500 of publicly coming out as a woman, noting that the lessons learned since day 365 have been greater. What I find really interesting, let me read this quote. "Something really ugly happened during these last few months where I started to believe that if I just got really pretty and if I stayed quiet, I could find success," Mulvaney said, noting that it was heartbreaking. "On day 488, I learned through an online poll that 50% of Americans like me. When do non-politicians get polled like that?" Dylan, celebrities get polled like that all the time. In fact, celebrities have something they call Q ratings. Not necessarily the same thing, but they typically try to figure out how the public feels about a personality. Now, if I were to say bring up Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt, you see, these guys, general celebrities, probably have an approval rating, if you were to poll people, around like 70 or 80%. It's probably as good as you're going to get. I'm trying to think of can you guys name a celebrity that everyone just loves? Maybe Keanu Reeves. I bet Keanu Reeves polls at like 95%. I bet nobody hates the guy. He's a chill dude. He minds his own business. He's not mean. He's not super political. He donates money. What's to hate? But, people are jealous. And so he probably is not going to get a perfect score. But Dylan, you're at 50%. A lot of people in this country do not like you and the work you do. And that's a reality of being in a political space. Dylan says, "I do wish it was 51, but also I would also like to know what exactly are we voting on. But here's what I learned from that the people who took that poll are judging me based on pictures and videos and articles, and those things make up such a small amount of who I actually am." I'll tell you what I think. I watched a video from The Price is Right of Dylan Mulvaney for several minutes, just screaming and running around and rolling on the ground and doing weird things. But really, the disturbing thing to me was the screaming. Watch the video. It's horrifying. It shows me a person who is so demanding and requiring of attention, of eyeballs, that they're just screaming it freaks me out. I'm not trying to be mean, but it does. I'm like, this is the kind of person you should not have on TV. We've got bad enough stories with crazy celebrities and things like that. You have a lot of individuals who become famous and they have breakdowns. I would advise, but not like it matters, not like anyone's in control of this, but I would say we should avoid, as a society, taking people who are screaming and demanding fame. Those are the kind of people you don't want to put on TV. And that's what I see with Mulvaney. But here's the latest. So unprecedented. Kevin O'Leary says Bud Light is the gift that keeps on giving. Plans to teach its 25% market share collapse to college students. Woo, it is history. From this point forward, Bud Light's actions here will go down in history. Truly amazing. The CEO of Anheuser-Busch InBev the multinational brewing company behind Bud Light, is reportedly planning to go on a tour this summer to listen to consumers. But Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, also known as Mr. Wonderful, doesn't believe it will turn things around. Quote, "I don't think it's going to work," O'Leary said in a recent interview with Fox Business. He's going to get an earful. There's no question about it. The problem with that tour and that idea is it keeps it as a frontline press item. Agreed. Mr. Wonderful then highlighted how Bud Light's situation is unprecedented in the beer industry. He said, "Beer brands take decades to build and usually are fighting for 1% to 2% share per year by spending hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising. This has never happened before. No beer brand has ever lost 25% market share in a matter of hours. It's so unprecedented that there's no playbook for this." They go on to mention Dylan Mulvaney, et cetera, and Modelo. O'Leary pointed out why Bud Light has been facing such strong headwinds. Beer is a commodity. The only difference is brand. So you really have to protect your brand every way you can. If you don't understand who's buying your brand and you enrage them, which seems to be what happened here, you don't know the outcome. And now we can measure it. 25% market share. This is so extraordinary that I'm planning to teach it this fall in the colleges that I visit and guest lecture at. I've never seen a brand case like this one. Later adding that Bud Light is the gift that keeps on giving. Anheuser-Busch InBev's share price also took a hit since then, tumbling 12%. As a Shark Tank star, O'Leary has invested in plenty of startups over the past 40 years. They go on to say, he's a successful guy. He knows what he's talking about. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where we're at. Bud Light is still tanking. Yuengling is skyrocketing. And this is, how else do I say it? Winning the culture war. It's everything you've asked for, and you've done it. Sound of Freedom, $130 million at the box office. Number 3 in the box office. Number 3, beating Mission Impossible as of yesterday. Incredible. Outkick reports, Bud Light sales continue to plunge this week, ending July 15th, dropping over 26% year over year, man. According to Bump Williams, Yuengling, America's oldest brewer, is coming for Bud Light at an alarming rate. If things continue at the current rate, we'll continue to see Modelo climb the ladder, Miller Lite, Coors, and Yuengling can gain market share. You know, the craziest thing is we've been heavily advocating for Yuengling since this whole thing started, and Yuengling is taking off. People get it. Yuengling, they're doing well. And there was this controversy. There was a venue that was having an all-ages drag show, and the venue was sponsored by Yuengling. Someone told us this on the show. We tweeted it out. Yuengling issued a response. Man, you guys, it's incredible to see that you and I can have an idea of something and say, hey, what about this? And actually see that impact. Yuengling did the right thing and said, all we do is sponsor the venue, but we talked with the venue and said, this should be 18 up. And we cheered for it. That's it. The show should be for 18-year-olds and up. If you want to have an adult, lewd, or gratuitous performance, or let's just make the argument, as many drag performers have said, it's not, it's just, okay, it's sexualized, right? If it's like if a woman was in a bikini and go-go dancing, I view it the exact same way. Not appropriate for children. We won. Yuengling agreed. They also posted a photo early on of someone holding a beer up against an American flag. These are the brands that should succeed. I'm glad to say they are. Shout out to Public Square. It's an app. They went public recently. You can download the app, and it shows you all of these different companies that take a pledge to support American values. I like it. I like the idea that we can look at a business that says we believe in America, we believe in the family, we believe in free speech, and that's why we're here. And they're on this platform where you can find businesses that you can support. If we keep doing this, building a parallel economy, then we win the culture war outright. Right now, I'm waiting for the news. The news is that Trump's going to be indicted, but they have not come out as of the recording of this video with the hard information, the official statement. So far, it's just that Trump's lawyers are informed to expect an indictment. The Democrats, the left, they're going hard into policy and law enforcement. But law enforcement doesn't matter. Culture does. I'll give you evidence. In West Virginia, cohabitation is illegal. In Florida, it's illegal for unmarried women to skydive on Sunday. No joke. There are things called blue laws. Blue laws they're laws that typically were made to prevent people from violating some kind of like rigid religious tradition or practice or something. like no drinking on the Sabbath or something like that. Not specifically, but things like that, like you can't work on Sundays. That's an example. They're more broad than that. Typically, though, blue laws don't ever get enforced. Like if a woman went skydiving on Sunday in Florida, ain't nobody going to say anything. And no cop is going to arrest her or issue a citation or anything like that. But the law is on the books. So what gives? Culture. Our culture will not support the idea of putting a woman in prison because she went skydiving on the weekend. Yeah, they're allowed to do that, right? The law's in the books, though. What gives? Like I said, in West Virginia, you can't cohabitate. Come on, people cohabitate all the time. Like you can't cohabitate without being married. That's what it means. Men and women cannot live together and engage in adult activities unless they're married. That's a law. Ain't nobody enforcing it. So while the Democrats try to make these moves, I sit here, I come to you and I say, with Sound of Freedom, with Bud Light, with the rise of Modelo and Yingling, we are showing cultural influence. Sound of Freedom especially. And culture is everything. Because if they keep going after Republicans, but eventually the culture shifts and this causes a major backlash publicly, they can't do it anymore. Law enforcement won't do it. This is the question I have. Why is it that police officers would not go into that adult sex performance that they allow children into and arrest anybody? Culture. There were protesters outside, but the cops were like, I am not getting in the middle of this, even though it is discernibly illegal. In West Virginia, under the same laws for cohabitation, children cannot be at drag shows. But culturally, the police will do nothing because they know laws can only be enforced with cultural support, with cultural confidence, with the confidence of the people. It makes sense, right? In this instance, though, the country is fractured, especially in West Virginia. Who supports children being on stage at a lewd adult performance? Leftists. And the police are thinking to themselves, I think it's wrong. I know it's illegal, but I'm not going to get in the middle of a political conflict. And that's just it. Police will not enforce laws if they feel they are on the wrong side of the political majority, regardless of what is on the books. Crazy, right? But that's the way it is. So here's where we are. As they prepare their indictment, their third or whatever indictment for Trump, and they're going to make an attempt to remove him from the ballot, it's interesting to me that Republicans just sit back and watch it all happen. Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, they do nothing. But you know what? I'm over here focused on a culture war. That's why we have castbrew.com, Cast Brew Coffee. Bud Light's going down the tank. New brands are emerging. Conservative Dad's Ultra Right beer. We got a bunch of that stuff. And we've got Cast Brew Coffee. We're opening a coffee shop. We are building the cultural spaces. I think the most important endeavor that we currently have here at Timcast is Cast Brew Coffee. The goal is to have physical locations everywhere. And as I've explained it before, but I'll explain it again because it matters. You walk into a coffee shop, a soccer mom, bringing her kids to go play soccer. And she says, we're going to stop and get some snacks and some coffee. She looks up on her old Google Maps and says coffee shop, and boop, a little pin appears. And it says Cast Brew Coffee here in the shopping center. And the mom says, I'm going to go and buy some coffee. She goes inside with the kids, and the kids want orange juice and chips or whatever and apple slices. And she looks up, she orders herself a cold brew. And while she's waiting for that cold brew, there are TVs on the walls. And who's on that TV? Steven Crowder, Matt Walsh, Viva Fry, Timcast IRL. And the kids are giggling, and she looks up, and it's me. And I'm saying something like, Joe Biden has recently said X, Y, and Z. And she's like, oh, I didn't know that. And that is how we get in the cultural space. A video like this being played for the general public. How do we break through to regular people? Fox News is garbage-controlled opposition. This is how. Regular people will walk into the coffee shop, and they will hear something simple. They'll see a video clip of Joe Biden saying, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion. And they'll go, oh, wow, I can't believe he said that. I'll take the ham and cheese, and I'll have the, you see what I mean? Then they go to work, they're hanging out, and someone will say something like, do you hear that Joe Biden was trying to get a guy fired and he was trying to withhold loans or something? The liberal at the office being like, that never happened. And then there's the guy holding the Cast Brew Coffee being like, no, I just saw that today. Yeah, that happened. That's how we do it. So when the Democrats make those moves and they try and violate the law or the spirit of the law and they try to use the power of the DOJ against their political opponents, people won't stand for it. And the cultural shift will happen right before our eyes. Bud Light is evidence of that. It's the opportunity. I said this about the Daily Wire, too. Hollywood has abandoned the top of the mountain. Disney climbed to the top. They stood up top, planted that flag, and then eventually said, you know what, let's go down there. And they walked away. And all the Daily Wire did was start walking up to the top. Angel Studios walking up to this vacant location saying, I guess we'll take it. We're going to do the same thing. Build that parallel economy. In the meantime, it doesn't mean we just sit back and watch as Donald Trump gets indicted. The Republicans need to be doing something, but they're not. So it will require political effort and cultural effort. And I think, at least on our part, that's the best I can do. We also are launching that skate show. Currently in production. Filming has already started. Construction on the actual park itself has to come, but we have the big open space and we're gearing up. I'm excited for it. I'll leave it there. Buy Cast Brew Coffee if you want to support our efforts at castbrew.com. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all at 4 p.m. on this channel.